Okay, we are at 4:05. Hi, everyone. This is the last session, one of the last sessions of the day. I'm Tricia Gordon at the University of Virginia, and I'll be moderating this presentation on usability testing and tool development at NYU, presented by Kyle Blythe and Jeff Posh. Kyle is a UX design specialist at NYU. He works with project teams to gather requirements, design features, and provide functional expertise. He also has provided technical support, guidance, and training to faculty and staff at NYU. Jeff is the product director for NYU's instance of Sakai. He works closely with designers, developers, instructional technologists, faculty, and other members of the NYU community in continually improving NYU's instance of Sakai and related services. So just a note to attendees, you should all be muted upon entry, and if you aren't muted, you might want to go ahead and mute your mics. But you can unmute yourself if you have questions. Please feel free. And or enter them into the chat. I'll be tracking those, and I assume Jeff and or Kyle also will be. And Jeff and Kyle, I'll let you guys decide how you want to take questions either during the presentation or at the end. That's completely up to you. So the session is being recorded and will be available at a later date on the Sakai YouTube channel. And if you have any problems with video or audio, please let me know in the chat. So now I'm going to turn it over to Kyle and Jeff.
Great, thanks, Tricia.
Awesome. Yeah, so in terms of questions, maybe we wait till the end and just make sure we get through everything, and then we can just kind of run up the list of them. Great. Okay. So. Thanks for joining everyone at 4 o'clock Eastern time. Appreciate that. So we're just going to take a look at the agenda for the presentation. Walk through that quickly. So we're going to talk about usability or UX testing and look at that sort of at a glance. And then we'll delve into some projects that we've done where usability testing has been central and talk about the outcomes of those. And finally, we'll talk about some new and exciting work on the resources tool and again, how usability testing has figured into that. Okay, so what is usability testing or user experience testing? These are sometimes used interchangeably. People will also talk about UX or UXD. These are all fun buzzwords. And so it's really a key component of what you might call user-centered design. Or user experience design. Again, lots of buzzwords, but you'll see it boils down to some pretty basic concepts. It's essentially used to evaluate the usability of a system. We can go back one slide, sorry, Kyle. To evaluate the usability of a system, an application, a website, a vegetable peeler. Usability testing is done, not only with technology products, but other products as well. And there's a sort of a long tradition of that. And it's based on not only feedback from users, but the behavior of actual users, with that product, whatever it is. So it's definitely different from a survey or a focus group where folks are just telling you what they think about the product. In the past, usability testing was done in labs with multiple cameras, one-way mirrors, huge numbers of participants, the way you'd think about an academic study being done. But more recent research suggests that really shows that successful usability testing can be done in a more lightweight, although still structured way. And it doesn't need to be done in a lab. It can be done most anywhere. You can use the testing participants' own computer, and simple screen capture software is typically what we do. And in fact, many times it's nice to go to the user's office or to a meeting room in their building that's quiet enough to do the testing. So lots of flexibility in how we do this. And again, the research, and we'll provide some references at the end of it, shows that you don't need huge numbers. You don't need a huge N, as it were, like you would in a large psychology experiment. But really, 5 to 10 participants, per test is really what you need. After that, you start seeing sort of diminishing returns for your investment in testing. Okay, so we'll jump to the next. So usability testing, it's often used in an iterative or agile, another buzzword, development, product development. So it allows the design team to understand how users are actually using a product, so they can ensure that they're addressing real problems and real needs. Because again, it's based on not only the feedback of the user as you're talking to them, as they're sort of thinking out loud as they test, but also their actual behavior, like where they're clicking, etc. And so this allows a design team and development team to adapt the design and functionality to provide the best user experience possible. And so just as you think about it, you kind of see this cycle. So say, and when Kyle talks through the different projects that we've done, it really starts with user research. So observation. So you're seeing how, say, for example, a user's using the resources tool today. You ask them to, go through and show me how you use it, show me how you upload a file, etc. And this can be structured or sometimes a little more free form. But in addition, user research can also include survey data and system data, and even focus groups. So that's a broader category, user research. But when we talk about usability testing, it's really about that in-person, one-on-one usability session. So in terms of this larger design process, you can see where it fits in. In addition to the user research, you have competitive analysis. You see what other products are doing. This is all a very iterative, agile approach with the developers. And then again, it comes back to usability testing. So you use user research to say, what's wrong with the current product? What problems are we trying to solve? You gather other information, and then once you've either created an initial design based on that, you again put it in front of the user, so you can see where it's cyclical. You're constantly sort of at phases in the project, you're putting that product or that design back in front of users, and they help you shape along the way, as opposed to creating your brilliant product and then seeing that users don't want to touch it at the very end. So yes. And now, okay, just some quick details that we talked about. Again, small number of users. It's in person, one-on-one. Again, many times you come to their office. It's typically we do somewhat structured testing, but there are some unstructured parts of that as well, where the user can kind of explore or just sort of, talk a bit about how they use the product and how it fits into the larger product. The sessions are recorded, and you want to get permission for that. So we have sort of a video release form that essentially says, hey, we'd like to record this for our own use in case we sort of forget what happened or forget the words. And we haven't really had any pushback on that. It just says we're not going to share it outside of our organization. Sessions usually last from 20 to 45 minutes, although they could be shorter in some cases. And there are observers of the session, either in person in the room. Usually you don't want more than 2 people with a given user, depending on how well you know them. But sometimes you have observers, well, typically you have observers who are coming in over a WebEx. So for example, if we're doing usability testing with someone, we have them, we send them a link to WebEx. They share their screen, and we may record audio from their computer. We may also do it from ours, but we have them do the WebEx so we can at least see their screen and capture their screen. So people who are online can see what's going on with the testing, and again, we can have a record of that. Okay, so now I will hand it off to Mr. Blythe to give a summary of the testing we've done here.
Great, thank you, Mr. Pash. So I'd like to just sort of start by giving a little summary of the testing that we have conducted thus far at NYU. So basically taking the approach that Jeff just outlined, this sort of lightweight iterative approach to usability testing, we have thus far done a total of 5 different sort of projects or efforts and tested participants on them. So we worked very closely with a dedicated usability firm early on back in November of 2014. This firm, TPG, or the Pastiello Group, who's also done work for the Rally Accessibility Project in the Sakai community, helped us to define a very flexible methodology for sort of iterative agile testing and development of new features locally for Sakai that we were able to contribute back to the Sakai community. So I'm going to focus on a couple of these different efforts, but just cumulatively, we have tested a total of 71 participants to date, 51 personally tested by myself or Jeff or other members of the product team here at NYU, as well as an additional 20 participants tested by members of the broader Sakai community for some of the Sakai 11 sort of naming conventions effort that we did. And a big shout out to the members of University of Hawaii and Walsh University for helping us with that testing. So these are all just testing protocols that we've developed and that we've tested to try and improve and update features in Sakai. So we're going to start by looking at 3 different projects and efforts that we've done. The first is the new gradebook, which was released to the Sakai community for last year's Sakai 11 release. We're also going to look at the Sakai 12 UI. So this is a modern, clean user interface for our local upgrade to Sakai 11, which has since been contributed back and is actually going to become the default skin for all users in the next release of Sakai. And then the third one that we're going to look at is a user-friendly left menu navigation for the lessons tool. So this is modeled after and improving upon some other interaction methods that you see in platforms for being able to navigate between different submenus in various pages. And this is, again, something that's going to be in Sakai 12. So these various contributions, that should be noted, have also come at the request of and in collaboration with our institutional partners and collaborators in the Sakai community. So for the new gradebook, we partnered with Notre Dame and Longsight, while the Sakai 12 UI work was really requested by our friends, and we had a lot of help from our friends at Notre Dame, UVA, and elsewhere with that. So there's been a great deal of enthusiasm and support for these changes. And it just reinforces the power of this UX testing, that it helps to identify and address common needs regardless of institution or vendor. Okay, so let's, before we get into actually the gradebook, I also want to point out that at the end we're going to talk about some redesigned resources tool work that we're going to be focusing on. So this is going to be something that we are hoping to contribute back to Sakai, be it in Sakai 13 or another release, depending on timeline. And while this tool is currently in development, usability testing has been a big part of the project from the start. So it has allowed us to iterate upon and refine the user experience, design workflows before development proper even began for this tool. But
yeah, go read the email that just came out. Read the email that Nat just sent. It's not.
So we'll get to that in a little bit. Okay, but first, let's take a look at the new gradebook. So the new gradebook tool is a tool that was released for Sakai 11. So it was developed in response to, locally at NYU, a faculty satisfaction survey where the gradebook actually had the lowest satisfaction score of all tools in Sakai. So we knew that we needed to make major improvements to the gradebook tool. So we worked together with the Sakai community. We worked with Notre Dame and with commercial vendors to develop designs and do usability testing and begin developing this product. So as a whole, we conducted usability testing with 17 participants in collaboration with TPG, the accessibility usability firm. And we had a very iterative process that, again, Jeff defined earlier that we did with this gradebook approach. We started with paper mockups, then moved on to clickable prototypes, and then eventually a live version of the tool. And at each stage, we put it in front of users, got their feedback, and iterated upon it. So next, we're going to have some examples of that. So we started with a very low fidelity wireframe. This is dating back a couple of years here. But you can still see that for those of you that are familiar with Gradebook NG, the basics here are in place. You still got the grade cell entry in cell. You've still got little drop downs in the UI where you can enter the grade log or view or edit comments. You'll have a button to add a grade item. So the basics are here, but we wanted to be able to get something together quickly that we could put in front of users. So we got feedback based off of that. And from there, we went on to develop a basic HTML and JavaScript wireframe that we were able to, again, place in front of users and have them click through. So this is just a bit of an evolution on that. And once we had users working with an actual version of this tool, we were able to start getting some really good feedback from it. So we got some findings that we were able to use to further refine these designs. We found, for example, that people wanted very clear indications that content was being saved in the tool. That's why in Gradebook NG as it currently exists, there's a, excuse me, there's both a saving and saved notification at the top of the tool, reminiscent of Google Drive. When you're typing comments, you can see that content has been saved at the top of the screen. You also get nice little green indicators in cell when content's been saved. We have descriptive error messages in line now. So when you do throw an error by entering an invalid score, for example, you'll get information letting you know exactly what happened. We got great feedback about displaying comments in line. So rather than having to open a Lightbox window to view comments, you can just click on the comment sort of icon, the little bubble that appears in cell, to be able to view the comments that you've entered. We received just general UI feedback regarding zebra striping to make the spreadsheet rows easier to be able to discern. We also decided that the section column here was taking too much room on the screen. So we're able to move that into a little filter that appears above so that you don't have too much of your screen being taken up by student info. And we, based off of feedback that we received during testing, came up with the idea for a student review mode, which allows you to be able to preview the gradebook from a given student's perspective. These are all very good pieces of feedback that we received during this iterative testing and which helped define the scope of the project. And now we have the final tool. So you can see that all that feedback got incorporated into the design as it exists today. So just to sort of provide some statistics, at the end of every usability session that we would do, we would ask some standard Likert scale questions that helped define how the progress with the tool was coming. And as you can see with Gradebook NG, we were able to find that we were on the right path here. You could see that ease of use, 12 out of 13 participants here said that it was easy to use. Likewise, 13 out of 13 said it was better than the existing Gradebook. And 12 out of 13 said that they were likely to recommend it to a colleague. In no case did we receive any negative feedback outright. So this is how we were able to sort of gauge that we were on the right path. So outcomes with the Gradebook project. So we piloted it locally at NYU in spring of 2017, although it has been the default gradebook in Sakai 11. It is now the default gradebook at NYU as of summer 2017. And the summer 2017 gradebook adoption levels shows that there's a 28% increase over adoption levels during summer 2016. So people are interested in this new tool. And the great thing is that it continues to be developed and refined for Sakai 12 and forward. So in Sakai 12, there are some improvements to the table that have been contributed by NYU. Notre Dame has contributed some fantastic features for the settings screen with being able to view the grade distributions, for example. So there's a lot of continued momentum around this gradebook that we're very excited to see where it continues to go from here. So that's the gradebook tool. Next, the UI work for Sakai. So this started just as we were considering our upgrade to Sakai 11. We wanted to be able to refine and further improve the UI for our local instance, just for our upgrade. And we wanted to place a heavy emphasis on styling and consistency across different device styles. So we wanted to make sure that the mobile UI would remain consistent and navigation would feel very straightforward regardless of what device you were on. So we worked on doing local usability testing on this. We tested a total of 7 participants, again, in this iterative fashion. And this was purely just to update our local instance. So Here you can see the Sakai 11 UI as it exists in core. This is what you get out of the box when you set up Sakai 11. And what we were working on was trying to create a very light, clean UI for NYU. So we did a basic mock-up that had a white header, but had these sort of elongated rows in the left tool menu and very just light Google-esque design. And as we moved forward and we received feedback from faculty, we iterated on it and changed it a little bit. So this is actually the final product, a screenshot just taken from our local instance. So you can see we had some findings that we sort of developed and changed on. So we actually kept a brightly colored top header. Originally, we were looking to keep it very light and clean throughout, but we found that instructors actually wanted there to be some sort of bold color at the top of the screen to differentiate the actual app UI from the browser itself. We also found that the synoptic tools in the overview page needed to be a little bit more distinct. So we found an opportunity there to start creating a consistent design that matched other elements in other parts of the UI, be it the expandable syllabus entries, the accordion menus in the new gradebook settings screen, or in lessons. So this is just a step toward creating a unified user experience throughout the system. And we're able to ensure that the mobile user experience and system navigation remain consistent with desktop. So some statistics that we found there as well. So when testing faculty, we found that the vast majority found it to be enjoyable to use. 5 out of 7 participants found it enjoyable. 6 out of 7 said that it was better than the existing system. And 5 out of 7 said that it was better than other LMSs that they had seen in terms of just the UI. So that's pretty good. And I think that members of the Sakai community felt the same way. So when we showed this off during the most recent Sakai camp, there was really a lot of energy and effort to try and make this the default skin in Sakai 12. And as you can see here, this is the Sakai interface as it appears in Sakai 12, very reminiscent of what we have locally in production today at NYU. In fact, here's a side-by-side comparison. They look pretty similar. So we're very thrilled that this is the new default skin in Sakai, and we just really want to say thank you to all of our colleagues in the community that helped us to get this to happen. Okay, and also here's just a mobile UI comparison. So again, speaking about that need for consistency, the core Sakai 11 mobile UI was a huge step forward for Sakai. Having a responsive UI is a very great thing. But we locally in testing found that there was a lot of confusion around just the general navigation on mobile in Sakai 11 because just the header changes pretty significantly. The sites menu and tools menu buttons don't really work the same way that they do on desktop. So we really strove to make that consistent with the desktop UI on a mobile interface. So here you get a very similar layout to what you get on desktop with a sites button and with a tools menu that opens from the left. So you get a very consistent design there. Okay, so again, this UI is going to be, so it has been the default UI in NYU classes as of January 2017, and will be the default UI for all users that upgrade to Sakai 12. It moves Sakai towards a more mobile-first strategy with a consistent user experience occurring across different devices. Okay. Next, I just want to jump on to a new topic, which is lessons subpage navigation. So this is just another effort that we did usability testing on, and it was based off of a need to provide improved navigation for sequence learning modules in the lessons tool. So when you have multiple lessons tool in the left menu, and these lessons tools have subpages, and you want to be able to surface that. So there are other platforms, for example, like OpenEdX has a accordion-based left menu navigation where you can very easily see sequences of content and navigate between them. And we wanted to be able to provide a similar level of navigation. So for this, we tested a total of 8 participants. And in this time, we worked in tandem with our developers. So we iterated after each participant to further sort of refine this behavior to make sure that it worked as coherently as possible. So here on the left, we have a default left menu in the lessons tool where we are on a subpage in a lesson in week 1, but here you can't really tell that from the left menu. With this subpage navigation feature enabled, which is done through site info, you now see an accordion menu that expands open by default, and we can see exactly what subpage we're currently on. So the findings from this, just some of the refinements that were done throughout this process, were the ability to collapse open sections. So this is something that we didn't have originally. Originally, you would open a section and it would only open. You couldn't collapse it. So we were able to refine that behavior. And we wanted to make it make it easier to be able to select top-level lessons pages so that you get a better sense when you can see here that you have a subpage, but this is the top-level page. So we wanted to make that to be easier to be able to see. So you get a little arrow indicator that you can click on, and that takes you to the top-level page more easily. And we wanted to retain subpage highlighting when clicking into subpages. So if you were in a subpage of read, you'd more easily be able to tell where you are based off of that. Okay, so outcomes. So this was piloted at NYU in spring 2017. It's available to all instructors now as of July 2017. And it was contributed as a community feature for Sakai 12. So everyone that's going to be upgrading to Sakai 12 will have access to this lessons submenu navigation. And again, this provides flexibility for displaying content and structuring course navigation. Okay, so that's the existing projects that we've completed and the results of that from usability testing. Next, I want to focus on an in-progress project that we're working on, which is a redesigned resources tool. So why the resources tool? Well, the resources tool is used very heavily by all faculty and students, regardless of institution. I think for the most part, almost every instructor is going to end up touching the resources tool in some way, if only just to upload a file. And there's a lot of opportunities with the resources tool to be able to modernize and improve that user experience. There's a lot of great standardized examples of user experience with regards to modern web repositories that you can find online via Google Drive or Dropbox, Box, OneNote, etc. They all provide great examples of how you can interact with a modern web repository. So the consistently requested features that we found during user research were the ability to have drag and drop throughout the tool, to be able to drag files where you want them to display, to be able to provide easy searching within the tool. So I could search not just by file name, but by file type, for example, to have a built-in file previewer so that I don't have to download files to my computer to be able to view them, and to provide better integrations with external sources. So we did another session earlier this morning around Google Drive. So you can go back and view the recording for that if you'd like to be able to see an example of how we're integrating with external sources in the new resources tool. So thus far with the resources tool, we've tested a total of 11 participants, and we've been working solely with paper prototypes, iterating on these designs before even working with the developers to implement the actual tool, although that is now in progress. So with our remaining time here, I'd like to actually switch over to a mock-up and walk through the redesigned resources tool, just to give you an example of how the usability testing has influenced this design. Okay. Hopefully I'm still sharing my screen. Okay, great. So here we have a mock-up of the redesigned resources tool. So this is, I think, very much what the end result will end up looking like, but we just wanted to be able to provide something that we could show off today for this. So what we're envisioning having is a dedicated left menu, very reminiscent of other web repositories, where I can click and see the folder structure for my resources. And then the actual content of the current folder that I'm sitting on displays here on the right. So again, we want to be able to have drag and drop throughout this tool, allowing you to be able to, for example, move a folder into another folder or drag a file into the folder that you want it to appear. As far as navigating into a folder, you could simply just click to enter a given folder, at which point you would see that folder highlighted on the left and see the content of the folder, again, displayed on the right. one of the things that we wanted to focus on having is a single button for adding new content. Currently in resources, there's a multitude of different action buttons, basically one for every piece of content on the page. And if you want to add something into a folder, you have to make sure that you click the appropriate actions button to make sure it's going into that folder. Here, again, reminiscent of these applications, where I'm currently sitting is where I'm by default going to be adding content, although I could change that if I'd like. So when I select the option to add a new resource, I can choose to upload a file or add a new folder, and it's going to be going into the folder that I'm currently in. So that's what we're envisioning for that. Some of the other features that we're looking to have and that we've received good feedback on are the ability to toggle between different views, having a default sort of table-based row view, as well as a grid view to be able to display content. Oh, there we go. In a grid to be able to actually get previews of that content. Likewise, we want to be able to have dedicated right-click features where I can access all the various functions I would like to have for that item just by right-clicking on it. Or if I were to click on it, I could see the same sort of contextual actions display along the top here. And these include the ability to have file previewing built in so that I could see the file without having to download it to my computer. And this opens up a lot of doors outside of just the resources tool, having this file previewing within Sakai. Likewise, we want to be able to improve the edit screen for files, making it easier to be able to share content and to know how content is being shared. So here we're sort of modeling after Google a little bit to simplify the way that the access for this file works, whether it's hidden but accessible via the item link, whether it's visible to select groups, whether it's public, etc. Okay, so this is the basics of the tool design as we have it right now. We will continue to be iterating on this as we conduct additional usability testing and as we work with our developers to make this real. So I'm going to go ahead and return to the presentation from here so that we can get to any questions. So here on the last page, which we'll be uploading this to the Longsight site for today, this will have the resources that have some of the different usability testing, protocols and some of the different just ideas around this that we've discussed today. Okay, so any questions?
I just want to say, this is Jeff, I just want to say one other thing about the resources. The third one, the Steve Krug book, this Don't Make Me Think,
That's a good one.
it's a great one. I mean, if anybody's interested in it. I mean, the other ones, some of these are short articles, the Nielsen Norman Group ones. They're short, so that's a quick understanding, what is this about? But the Steve Krug book, and it is a classic. Someone said, I'm a slow reader and just probably a little slow in general, and it was easy to get through. It has nice pictures, so yeah, it's definitely worth a read.
Yeah, it's a good one. Guys, the resources changes that you are proposing look phenomenal. I just got to say, thank you.
Well, thank you.
It's really amazing. What a difference a good UI can make. I have a quick question. What did you use for wireframing back when I think you were talking about Gradebook at the time?
Absolutely. So we've done sort of all of our wireframing in Omnigraphal. So that is a very versatile tool. It can be used for wireframing. It can also be used for diagrams and things like that. But it's just a very good tool that has very easy to use guides that allow you to be able to structure content very easily.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? You can either come on your mic or type them in the chat. One other question, maybe you said it and I just missed it. What's the timeline? What are you thinking for resources for 13? for Sakai 13 release? Or
it's possible.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible, and we'd definitely love to get it back in the community. And
Now,
yeah.
do you guys have a farm project for this as well? Did you set up a farm to get more funding to help with the development, or?
You know, we did originally. I know we had it on there, and then it took a while for us to sort of work that through our own governance process here to kind of get it prioritized. And I mean, I think what we're obviously there are a lot of different directions resources could go. So we could kind of look at it in terms of phases too. But yeah, I mean, we'll never turn down money. And yeah, so we probably should get you know, a more official project at some point. But like I said, we might do that sort of in a phased approach once we kind of have the base, you know, the basic product
Right.
working.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, thank you, and hats off to you for doing this work. It's beautiful, and I can't wait. Anything else? Anything else you want to ask of the participants in the session, or about what you're working on?
Why not just embed Google Drive, says Chris Clark.
Oh.
Well, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, we did resources, kind of a deep dive on. We did a deep dive on the resources project this morning, and we showed kind of the integration with Google and how that sort of all ties together. I mean, I guess when we think about how resources is used throughout other tools, you know, whether you're surfacing that in lessons, you know, or what have you, you know, you probably need some kind of file store. So what we're trying to do is build a nice integration between the two that kind of extends permissions, but that's kind of it's a longer conversation, but it's all in the it's all in that video, and of course we're always happy to talk about it, you know, at another time too.
Yeah, with more time left.
Yeah, but yeah, we definitely, I mean, you say Google Drive, I mean, you know, as Kyle mentioned, you know, he probably mentioned, I can't remember between this presentation and the one this morning, but, you know, I mean, with something like a file repository, there are great models out there like Google Drive. And, you know, of course, we'll do things that sort of fit the context of the learning management system, but, you know, that's why it's one reason why this project was attractive, is because there aren't like a million ways to do this, at least not a million ways that make sense. Whereas if you think about like, what do we want a lessons tool to look like? That can go in so many different directions, but this is kind of a basic, like, hey, we know how to do this, you know, or the internet knows how to do this, you know, so let's leverage some of that knowledge.
Absolutely. Well, guys, this is fabulous, and it was really good information on conducting testing for, you know, getting a project from just the idea phase all the way to through the usability testing and the iterative process. That's fantastic, and really good information for the rest of us. Yeah, you really are awesome, and I know the community really thanks you for all the great work that you do, both of you and your teams. We're just about out of our time, so I'm going to invite folks to head on over to the session for awarding of prizes and to hear who has won them. So thank you, Jeff and Kyle, for your presentation, and thanks everybody for attending today, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Great. Thanks, everyone.